You're going to start to see that certain trades will earn more per hour than attorneys, which is ridiculous to think about. You do not have to be a millionaire to have a millionaire mindset. In fact, you will have the mindset long before you become the millionaire. Like, guys, I didn't buy my first $100,000 sports car until I had $1 million in the bank. And they were kind of irritated by that because to scale your company, you really had to focus on hiring the right people. I know this is a challenge, especially with service-based companies, finding qualified technicians.
All right, welcome to episode 7 of Expanding Local. Today I'm here with Tony Whatley, who is a best-selling author of The Side Hustle Millionaire. He is the co-founder of LS1 Tech, which is an online automotive performance community which grew to over 300,000 registered members and was later sold for millions. And he did this in just 5 years, and this was a side hustle of his. He is the founder of 365 Driven, where he uses his experience to change the lives of many people with his community, coaching, and podcast. Tony, thank you so much for coming on. I seriously appreciate you taking the time. Could you give yourself a brief introduction, let people know who you are, and go from there?
Yeah, I think most people, when you're asking them, doing an introduction, they always tell you their profession or their career, but I would say that I'd rather just describe my character. I'm a daredevil, and I like to do crazy things, and I'm a car guy, and I like to lift weights, and just, I'm an action taker.
Perfect. I'm sorry about that. My do not disturb was not working. So Tony, do you have any experience working with home service businesses? Like, are you helping to coach them or mentor them, and what kind of experiences have you learned there?
Yeah, I've got a few clients, some that do HVAC, some that are plumbers, some that do roofing and siding, so a few different home services businesses.
Perfect. And what kind of hurdles are you helping them jump over?
The main problem I think that most of the clients that come to me are working on is they're trying to scale their company. We're trying to scale something to maybe have a potential acquisition or exit, a couple of years in. And so we're really trying to focus on building the enterprise value and increase their valuation. And to do that, we're implementing systems and processes and making things more repeatable. We're really getting a handle on the marketing and the messaging, the branding, and trying to expand our reach in the localized areas that those companies exist in. And at the same time, I'm also scaling back the time commitments that are, from the founder, the CEOs, because I don't believe in just trying to work 16 hours a day to try to kill yourself to go create a company. And so we really focus heavily on them and trying to work less by putting the right people and processes and systems in place to scale the company. And I think one of the most rewarding things that I can help business owners with is by having that mental freedom, the time freedom, and the location freedom, because that's what ultimately most entrepreneurs start a company for, is because they want that freedom, but very few actually ever make it through that.
Yeah, and I feel like in the trades, there's a lot of stigma around not being in the field and not working. How do you help home service businesses get past that?
Well, I think everything starts with customer service. So the better your customer experience is, the more referral businesses you're going to get, and then you're not having to spend as much on marketing. I think too many people are trying to race to the bottom of their price point. They're not making any profit, and so it's hard to deliver quality if you're always sucking for oxygen because you can't stay afloat. So make sure that if you are going to pursue doing things quality wise and giving people the right level of service that they expect, that you charge enough to make a profit. You may have to say no to some of the jobs, but I think that too many people kind of get stuck at that race to the bottom type figure.
Okay. And so what are some other mindset hurdles that you find home service businesses struggle with the most?
Oh, mindset is the foundation of everything I work on. And I think one of the biggest money mindset that not just home services, but all business owners struggle with is that they tend to set prices based on their own personal comfort level of spending. And so let's say that they were like me and they grew up broke and they try to figure out how to make money. Well, they still have these mental hurdles that they carry into their adult life and into their profession that really limit their belief system. And so I'll give you some tangible examples here. So let's say that maybe you grew up without any money and you have a hard time spending more than $10 for a t-shirt. And you're like, I can never spend more. You got this mental thing. It's a subconscious thing. And you go to the store and you look at the price tag and you go, oh man, it's $15. I'm not spending that money on a t-shirt. Understand that comfort level of what you spent is based on probably something in your past. Maybe you were broke and $10 was a lot of money, but maybe it's not now. And so it's like an irrational hurdle that you're hurting yourself with. And guys, I've met millionaires that still have these weird beliefs, and we had to break through these things. And this also shows up in the pricing. So let's say that maybe you're a electrician. You go, hey, you know what? Uh, I can't afford to make more than $50 an hour, so I shouldn't charge more than $50 an hour. Like mentally, they're like, I'm a $50 an hour person. I shouldn't be charging $150 an hour like everybody else. And so they hold themselves back and they kind of just start to reduce their earning capacity because they're not comfortable with asking people to pay more than they would spend on themselves, right? So I think that's one of the biggest hurdles people have is they just don't understand that don't set pricing based on your comfort level. Look at the market value. Like what is the average, right? The prices out there. Charge that much. Just because you're newer doesn't mean you should charge less. Charge those amounts.
And so, is that something that can be fixed just by making them aware about it, or is there more like strategy from your end that goes into helping to change the mindset of these people?
Awareness is key. Most people operate in that subconscious, like we mentioned, and they just don't really have that awareness at all until somebody brings it up. And then they're like, oh man, that might be, hopefully someone listening to this podcast is kind of having that realization like, oh man, I kind of do that about this kind of subject or this purchase. And man, I was like, I can't, I need to break through that because any type of artificial ceiling that you place on your earning potential is going to limit your growth. And that's just the way it is. You kind of get in a comfort zone. So awareness is the first step, but the next part is the harder part is actually executing and taking that advice and raising your price. And we don't always have to jump from A to B. We can go, hey, just gradually step it up if that's going to make you comfortable. But what is the actual market price that's out there? Let's step it up. Like add a few bucks a week or something to kind of get you comfortable by doing that. And so by taking the action and then actually seeing the result, and you start to get these clients that are just pay it, or like you throw out a maybe the biggest invoice you've ever had, and you're like, oh man, it's a few $100,000 invoice. Like I don't know. I think they're gonna, I don't know what. And they go, yeah, cool. Like where do I wire the money? And you're like, oh, and you see it in reality. That's when it starts to reinforce that behavior needed to change. Like, oh man, this is not as bad as I thought it was going to be. I had to be more confident at selling that. Your voice, the way you communicate, even in your emails. If you're throwing out an invoice or a quote or a bid on something, but you feel like you're questioning it yourself, and you're doing a Zoom call with a potential client or you're in person with a potential client, and you're kind of like talking about a big price, but you're not real confident, and they can hear that, they can feel that energy in your voice. You don't have any certainty, you don't have any confidence, and they're going to key in on that. Their subconscious is going to hear you kind of like feeling squeamish about making a big offer, and they're not going to hire you because they're going to look for the person that's very confident, very certain that they feel that have done this before, because they're looking for that confidence to get the job done.
So aside from like self-worth and realizing people's inner value, what other sort of mindset shifts or mental, hurdles have you seen other home service businesses go through?
I think that many people kind of get stuck. Really, most of our basis of comparison is our parents, right? And if you had parents that work exceptionally hard their entire lives, but maybe they never made millions of dollars, you're going to start to limit, like, well, if my parents could never do it, maybe I can't do it myself. You kind of limit based on the people you surround, or you look at your best friends, like, oh, I've known him since high school, and he's not rich, he works hard, he's got an honest living. And that's good, but what other people have done has no bearing on your limitations on what you can achieve. And I think that you have to realize it's okay to surpass your parents, your grandparents. It's okay to do better, because as a parent myself, I would want my son to go do more than I have. Like, I want them to achieve more. I've kind of helped create the springboard to get them a better life. And so your parents worked extremely hard, but they also put you in that situation to get a better life than him. So you deserve to go do that. And I think that's how you prove to them, like, everything that they sacrificed was worth it to help you. And so certain people just kind of limit themselves based on what the potential of their friends and their parents, their surrounding, and their peers have done. And that's unfortunate, because I think that there's unlimited potential within everybody. It's just they have this frame of comparison, like, oh, well, so-and-so's very wealthy, and, I'm not that kind of guy. Or they do that self-deprecating humor, like, oh, I'm not the smartest guy. And, it's like, save the self-deprecating humor for when you're extremely wealthy, and it'll be funnier. Until then, it's kind of like this mental hurdle. It's really your subconscious speaking, and you're labeling yourself with stupid stuff, and it's going to cause you to not get where you want to be.
You mentioned like tradespeople, they really have this thing of like they want to be in the field, they want to work hard, they want to like work 16-hour days, and that's not. It could be the key at the beginning of a business, but it shouldn't be the end goal. How do people delegate properly and kind of get over that mental mindset of like they're not going to do it as good as me?
To me, to scale your company, you really had to focus on hiring the right people. I know this is a challenge, especially with service-based companies, finding qualified technicians, especially certified type workers, any type of welders or electricians or plumbers. Like, it's hard to find good help. Guys, you're not alone. That's the entire nation right now. There's not enough people in the trades. We understand that. And I hate to break it to you, but that's always going to be your problem forever. If you choose to build a business in the trades, finding qualified employees is going to be your number one struggle for the rest of your career. That's just, like, accept it and understand that that's part of the game. It's not as easy as it was 20 years ago to find people. And so here's the thing, like, if you do find those rare nuggets, the people that are really good at what they do, you need to pay them to stick around, because it's very hard to find those people. And one of the biggest mistakes I see is people that are actually making a good profit, and they go, well, I've got this auto mechanic, and he's a lead mechanic, and the market rate is $30 an hour for that, so I'm only going to pay him $30 an hour. And then they wonder why the guy quits in a year, and they're like, oh man, I wish I had that guy back. And these other 5 guys that have come and gone, to replace him, they all sucked, and I can't figure it out. It's because people that are really exceptional at what they do have a higher value than what's out in the market. And you have to get off the worrying about, like, oh, I got to pay them what market rate is, and pay them what you think they are worth to your company. Like, look at them as an individual and go, hey, if I lost this individual today, what would I pay to get him back? And whatever that answer that pops in your mind, that should be the answer that you're paying them. And if you're thinking, well, I'm not making enough business to do that, well, figure out how to improve your business to be able to pay that person and keep them there, because that's the key. Like, we're always trying to keep good talent. It's just like sports teams. When you want the good talent, you pay extra for what you want. And the ones that are underperforming, you just cut them loose.
So you mentioned it, like, employers kind of blaming the employees who leave, and it's like, oh, these guys aren't committed, they're just quitting. How important of a role is accountability as a business owner?
Accountability is everything, especially if that's one of your core values. When we develop our core values, always think about this. I make recommendations on core values. It's not some checklist that most companies hang on the wall and they consider it done, right? Core values are, if a business owner, is your personal core values. Like, I don't like to write corporate core values. I always recommend my clients write personal ones, things that guide their entire decision making in their life. And so, doing the right thing, not the easy thing, showing up on time, like all these things that are important to you as an individual. Once you get down your 5 to 8 or so core values that are your personal things that you will not break, you will not, break any of your own core values, those should become your corporate core values. Like, if you own the company, those should be the same core values. And you should always use those core values to hire and fire, right? When you see people that are not adhering to those core values, one, you make sure that they're educated on what the core values are. And I always recommend monthly or weekly meetings, weekly team meetings. Cover one core value per week. Say, hey, we're doing core value number 3. It's this. Give us some examples. Get people involved. And then every week you do a team meeting. You just share the next core value. And then it kind of just rotates over and over and over forever. And soon enough, all the employees will understand each and every core values, what examples are, how they apply, examples that they've used in the workspace that demonstrate those core values. And you find people that are breaking the core values, that should be a flag. Like, they're not the right fit for the company.
Are employees part of the process of creating core values, or is that on the owner?
It's always going to be on the owner, because employees will do whatever they can to get away with things if you allow them. And so, unless we're talking about your executive team, if you got a company big enough where you have middle managers, yeah, they should be part of that process. But ultimately, whoever owns the company or runs the company should be the one creating the core values.
Can you walk through what the process looks like for your clients, like how you kind of set people up for success, whether it's mindset or their health? How do you structure that?
It's a custom mix for everybody. I don't have like a cookie cutter 10-step to success type program. Everybody comes in a different level of skill. a different level of experience. Maybe they've been in the industry 20 years or whatever. They have different reasons for being there. And so, some of the people want to build a personal brand and put themselves out there and use social media to grow their audience and their business. Some people just want to scale and exit. So everybody looks at a different way of coming in. So I just really spend some time in assessing the things that they want. We set some 1-year benchmarks and goals that we're trying to achieve. And in my former career is project management and engineering. I'm good at building the steps and understanding how to work backwards from goals. And we can break that down into quarterly, monthly, and weekly, and even daily in some situations. And so part of having work with a coach or in kind of a mastermind group is that you gain some accountability and you gain a process, because most business owners, and let's be real, most humans have this overwhelm because there's always endless amount of tasks that we have to achieve even on a daily basis. And most people don't know where to start. It's just looking at a pile of things they got to do, and they're like, oh man, I don't know where to start. And so most people will gravitate towards the things they're good at or the things they enjoy doing first, and then they kind of disregard the things that are hard to do or challenging. And unfortunately, most of those things that are hard to do and challenging, the things that you're avoiding, the things you're procrastinating, are the ones that are going to actually move the needle on your progress. And so unless you have a plan in place, you're going to disregard those, and you're going to do them last minute, and you're going to get half-assed results because you've been half-assing things. And so we really start to figure out, what is the next step? What's the next step? What's the next step? Don't worry about what's coming. We've already addressed that that's on your schedule, but what's the step you got to take today?
How important is personal brand when it comes to generating revenue for your business?
It depends on the business. Some businesses don't really, benefit from a personal brand, but some of them do. I think that if your business could, that's the question that an owner should ask themselves. Like, hey, if I were to build a social media presence, is there any possible way for me to monetize and create more income or profit from doing so? And if you're not doing it, that's kind of on you. It's, I get it. People are scared. They don't like being on camera. Like, I know that your podcast is new. Like it was probably some fear factor of pushing the button and buying the equipment and deciding to actually launch it. I get that. It's all these things that you have to understand. Like, what's the potential upside versus the potential downside? I look at it as a risk analysis. And if the risk is very low, like, okay, like you're starting a podcast. Most people make it to 10 episodes and they quit. That's average. What's your net risk? Oh, I bought a microphone and a camera. Like, that's your risk. Oh, I might have embarrassed myself because I didn't do it as good as I thought. Like, that's the risk. Okay, you can get over that pretty quick. What's the potential upside? You build an amazing network. You become well known. You start to get generating leads. There's like endless potential upside. You could generate millions of dollars over the next 10 years by growing the number one show. Who knows? We don't know where it's going to go. And so I always look at things as what's the upside versus the downside. And usually the upside's pretty damn good. And there's a lot of risks that are really low that people just kind of, they worry too much about.
So this space that I'm in, digital marketing, like building your personal brand is almost a must. Like, people have to know, like, and trust you before they sign on with your agency, because especially with all the scams going on in this space. And I think one of the things that held me back from posting a while ago, I just recently started like posting consistently, building my own personal brand. I didn't feel like I had enough knowledge or experience and couldn't provide enough value to the marketplace based on the knowledge I had. I'm 24 years old. I've only been doing this for a short period of time. I've had my agency for about 2 years. When do you think someone should take the leap into like showcasing their knowledge as opposed to, I don't know, just posting about the things that they think they might know but don't fully understand yet, if that makes any sense?
When I think about social media content, I always think about, how do I educate people, or how do I entertain people, or, like you got to just understand, like, what am I doing it for, right? Spend some time to build that relatability so people know who you are. They may not know what you do. They may not need what you do, but they're starting to understand who you are as a person. Because I think of personal branding is more valuable than the current company that you work for. Because if you're like me and you build companies and you exit companies and you didn't have an audience and you didn't have a network and you didn't have all these things related to your personal brand, your reputation, then you wouldn't be able to just jump into the next thing and go do things. So I always think about, like, your personal brand is portable. You get to carry that with you for the rest of your life. So you might as well build a good tool set. You don't want to do unethical things or mistreat people or be a jerk and all these things that are going to really harm you, because especially nowadays, the internet is a history archive. They're going to find all that information. You can't hide from it. And so If you look at the company that you work for, your marketing agency right now, this might be only your 5-year play. Let's say that you build an amazing agency and some private equity company wants to acquire you in 5 years and you exit for millions of dollars. And then what's next? They're going to tell you, hey, you can't build a marketing agency because non-competes and whatnot. But if you build enough brand recognition, you get to go change industries and you get to take some of that audience with you. And it's very important to understand that. I mean, I've built very large companies in the automotive space, but then I went into the retail space, and then I went into the coaching and the public speaking and the podcasting space. And I've got clients that were employees of mine 20 years ago that have come to me in a coaching capacity to help scale and exit their companies now. And so, it's like the same people will follow you around as long as you treat everybody well. And so that's something you should never cave on your core values. You should never go to that. So I think that understanding the content that you're going to create, what is it for? Who do they get to know you? And eventually when you do ask and you put a call to action out there, they're going to be more receptive to it.
Perfect. And you drive a lot of engagement on your, I think I'm only following you on Facebook, but I know you're all over the place. How do you maintain a community and have people that are loyal to your content? It's like we were meeting for the first time on this podcast. And like, I'm already a huge fan. How do you do that?
Years of consistency, right? I think if you can show that you actually give a shit about people and you care about people and you interact with people and treat people like humans and not try to put yourself on a pedestal and think you're better than other people, then people are receptive to that and people want to support good people. And so I think one of the biggest mistakes people do on social media is they don't interact with people. They'll create a post and then they kind of disappear, and they'll make excuses like, well, I'm too busy and I can't interact with people and that, right? And I always just roll my eyes at people that say that kind of stuff because that's ego speaking. Because for everybody that says that, I could point to a dozen people who are kicking your ass in business and financials and in life who have way busier schedules that do have the time to do that. So when someone says they don't have time to do something, and me being a coach, I say, well, show me your calendar. Show me your calendar. Like, pull it out your phone right now. Show me your calendar. And they never have it. I would say that 99% of the time I've put people on a spot like that, they never have a calendar, but they don't have time. It's like, well, how do you not have time if you're not even managing the time that you have? Because if someone like Elon Musk can make posts on Twitter a few times a day, then you can too, because he owns a few multi-billion-dollar companies and he's very involved in those companies, but he can still communicate with people and build a network, right? So why do you think you're more important or more busy than that guy? And so start with the calendar. Make sure that you're if you understand social media and interaction is valuable and it could potentially create more profit for your company or your personal brand, you should schedule that time. You should guard that time. If you're only going to do it for 20 minutes a day, that's fine. That's all you need. 20, 30 minutes a day. That's all you can do a lot in 20, 30 minutes by interacting with other people in your network, your peers, potential clients, showing them that you're active, supporting what they're doing. When I see people working out and doing things that are positive, I'm always going to throw a like or say, hey, keep going, because I want them to know that I see their comment and I acknowledge them and I support what they're doing. Now, when people are doing negative things that I disagree with, I'm not going to interact with those people because I don't want to reinforce negative things that tear them down.
How do you manage time effectively?
What was the question?
How do you manage time effectively?
Schedule. Everything's on a Google Calendar. I just have everything logged into my Google Calendar so I know what I'm doing. I plan out at least a year in advance, like on trips and events and things like that, and things that are client meetings that reoccurring. They're on the calendar for out a year. But daily stuff, I make sure that I just time block things, whether I'm writing a next book or things like that. I guard that time. And I think that one of the best things you can have is if you're always distracted by things, block out those 30-minute increments or 1-hour increments of things that you need to do and put the task on there. And it allows you to be really focused in that time frame because you're not worried about what's coming. It's on your schedule. Like, hey, I got an hour to work on this. Let me work on it for an hour. Then when you get to the next thing, you say, okay, I got 2 hours to work on this. Let me focus on that. And that's fine. And the best thing about that is when you get external distractions, whether that's like friends that go, hey, let's go out for a drink tonight or happy hour, or let's go hit the bar, like any kind of distractions, right? If you have discipline and you have a calendar, you're more able to say no to them because you've already locked in that time, and it's easy to say no and be polite about it. You'll say, hey, I appreciate the invite, but I've already overcommitted for that time slot. But hey, man, thanks for asking. And that's a nice way of saying no. And it kind of keeps you on track and it keeps you disciplined and you don't feel guilty about it because you actually had that on your calendar. If you didn't have it on your calendar and someone invites you, you kind of feel guilty, like, oh, I probably should go. And yeah, I didn't really have anything planned anyways. Like that's a weak example to be, like I've always had that calendar.
You gave the example of like people asking you to like go hang out at a bar, things like that. I think I've pretty much blocked out anyone that has asked me that in the last year or so. Do you think that's a good thing, or do you think you should still associate with those people, or what are your thoughts there?
I don't think they, I think people are in a different space in their lives. I mean, I remember being 24. I was in college. I was working two jobs. I was a full-time welder and pipe fitter, and I was waiting tables on the weekends, and I was going to college at night. And so I slept like 3 hours a night for 7 years. It took me a long time to finish school, and I didn't have time for socializing and things like that. I mean, I felt like I was broke and stressed out and just hungry all the time. And so I didn't have time to do the socializing. And even when I was in school, University of Houston, I think they were the national champions. While I was in college, I never went to a football game. And I love football. I played football in high school, but I didn't have time for that stuff. And, people would ask me and they would ask me and they would ask me to do things. And I would just have to politely say no, like I'm working. I'm waiting the tables at the restaurant this weekend. Sorry, I can't go. And yeah, I found some opportunities to have that socializing time. I think that it's important, but it wasn't frequent. And I don't have any regrets about that because when I finally did get the engineering degree and I graduated, I was around 26 at that time. Man, I was making way more than all of my friends and I had a lot of free time. And that's actually when I started building businesses on the side. It's because I had that time and I'd put myself in that situation. And so I think there are times you do have to put that sacrifice in and that hustle, but it's all for a purpose. You got to understand, what am I working towards? What is this leading to? And don't think that you're going to do that forever because I wouldn't want it. Like, college to me was like one of the worst experiences of my life because of that stress and 7 years of that, working, construction. And then it was just hell, man, but it was all worth it.
Do you think there is a good time and a bad time to start a side hustle? Do you think it can ever be like detrimental to your success?
The best day to start is today. The best way to learn entrepreneurship is by execution. Too many people over prepare. They read every business book, they listen to every podcast, they go to every seminar and convention, they take a bunch of notes and a bunch of books that they never look at. And they're always telling you, like, someday I'm going to start a business. Someday I'm going to start a business. And when the time is right, I'm going to start that business. When the time is right, I'm going to join that mastermind or that coaching group. Like, they always have an excuse. Everything's like someday, someday, someday. And I always think about, like, we talked about calendars. Like, I don't have a calendar that says someday on it. Like, there is no someday. Is it Monday or Tuesday or Wednesday? Like, there's no someday on your calendar. So if you keep saying the word someday, it's never going to show up on your calendar. And I'm 52 for context, and I've known people since high school that were always talking about starting businesses that still have not started a business. So, you're going on 30 years plus of people just talking about it. Even when I was working in engineering space, like, people would see the lifestyle that I had and all the cars, and they would ask me, like, hey, man, how do you afford all that? And I was like, well, my businesses that I created over here actually pay me more than my engineering salary. And I can teach you how to do that. Oh, yeah, cool. And I would teach them how to do it, and they would never do it. They would never take the advice because I think there was a lot of mental hangups. They didn't believe it was possible. And I don't really hang out with those people anymore because, 20 years of excuses, they're kind of, they're overweight. They don't understand, like, why they're not making money. They're complaining about their job on Facebook. It's like, man, I gave you advice 20 years ago for 5 years and you still didn't do anything with it. So not everybody's meant to do that, but they all got the same excuses.
You mentioned that you give advice, and I know your advice is good. You're good at what you do. The people like never follow it. Do you think that's a reason to just like provide a bunch of value and not hold anything back on social media, if that makes any sense? I hope I asked that properly.
You could hear the frustration in my voice when I was talking about those people in my past. And it's because anytime we're trying to educate or see the potential in people and encourage people and they don't jump on it and they don't do anything with it, you do take that personal. You kind of feel that. And there was probably a shift that occurred around age 40 when I started to realize, as I became more public with the things I'm doing, that not everybody's intended to have your information. And instead of focusing so much on the people who are, and we call them ask holes, that's kind of a funny phrase. Like they ask a lot, but they don't do anything with it, right? If you focus too much attention and build resentment and hold grudges on the people that aren't doing anything with it, you're really missing the big picture because you should be serving the people that actually will do something. And these are people that are going to come into your audience or find your show or read your book. And the people that you haven't met yet, they're on their way. They're coming into your fold. And so I focus nowadays on the people that actually do take the actions and the people that do get the results and the people that do want to participate in the things I put on. And so I don't really worry too much about the people that aren't listening because they're always going to be those people. And that's the majority. It is the majority. But you got to be more focused on serving the people that actually do care and actually do show up.
How important do you think the 80-20 principle, 80-20 rule is when running your business?
Yeah, the Pareto principle, good one. It shows up in every aspect of life, dude. That 80-20 rule is really weird how it kind of works out. So for people that don't understand what that means 20% of the results of the actions are coming from, 80%, or only 80% of the results are coming from 20% of the people. That's the easiest way to remember it. And you can do this, okay, we'll create a webinar. Let's say like I'm going to do an online webinar. Let's say it's free. I'm going to teach something very valuable. 100 people will sign up and 20 people will actually show up. And you're like, oh, what happened to those other 80 people? Like they don't take life seriously. They're wondering why they're not where they want to be, but they're just kind of like not committing to things. They're just kind of half-assing through everything. And so, we understand that like 20%, the top performers are always in the top 10 to 20%, right? And so you don't ever want to be in the lower 80% of anything.
And how important do you think it is to understand that the 80-20 principle is also fractal? Like it keeps going further and further and further. Like I'm not even going to try to do the math here right now, but like it keeps going and then you can just go infinitely with the 80-20.
It shows up in all different, even in nature it shows up. I mean, it's really weird mathematical relationship that anything that requires some kind of an action or result, it's always like 80% doesn't do it and 20% does. Like it's really unusual. If you go, get on Google or use AI and you kind of search 80-20 examples, you'll find like it shows up in nature a lot, and that's kind of weird,
How important is health for business owners going into 2025?
I understand now that health and fitness, especially mental health and physical health, are the most important thing that you have. I've had some health scares in my past, and it really makes me reflect on how time is very valuable. And I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing now if I wasn't in a near-death experience while racing cars. And so I probably would have stayed with building businesses and not being on any stages or microphones and been comfortable and like all that kind of stuff. And so there's been a time in my mid 30s when I started to let myself go physically, and I was out of shape and I was no longer an athlete. And I felt like, even though I could look in the mirror and I wasn't seeing what I felt like inside. I still felt like I could be an athlete and I felt like I could perform, but I'd look in the mirror and see like a pudgy, overweight, middle-aged guy. And so when I started to approach 40s, when I started to be more focused on fitness and getting my nutrition back in check, and it's been 12 years now. I've been very consistent since 39. And literally I am physically stronger than I've ever been in my life. And I was an athlete. I was doing powerlifting even in college. And so I'm stronger now in my 50s than I was back then because I'm more disciplined. So yeah, it is important. And, as you get older, I know you're young, in your 20s, like everybody should be in shape. Let's be real. You should be in shape. You're expected to be in shape in your 20s. When you get in your 30s, like it's less common. There's still a lot of people in their 30s that are in shape. It's like it's common. But man, when you get to 40 and you're looking around, there's like hardly anybody in shape in their 40s. I mean, you look at your yearbook and you go back in high school and you're like, you see the people that are your age and they look 10, 15 years older than they really are because they just kind of let themselves go physically. And now that I'm in my 50s, it's very rare to find people that are in their 50s that are in shape that take care of themselves. And so understand that these are all opportunities to have your confidence. And when you walk into a room and you're older and you're in shape, like people notice. And when you're someone at your age and you walk in shape, they may notice, but it's like oh, okay, you don't stand out, And so the disciplines and the habits that you can create at this younger age, carry those on for the rest of your life. Understand this is going to be a part of my life. It's very important, and to make sure that when you get married or you're in a partnership with someone, that they have the same core values, that they value the health and fitness. It's very important. My wife and I have always been that way, because if one of you or both of you is kind of like flaky on that, both of you are probably going to end up going the wrong way, because we kind of fall down to the lowest values of our core values, right? So make sure that you get with somebody that's got the same core values, that takes it seriously, and make sure that that's a part of our life. Like the trips we're going to go on, we pick hotels that have nice gyms. Like that's one of the requirements. Like if we're going to go stay in a hotel, we always look at to see what the gyms look like on their website before we book them. And, are we going to eat at the right restaurants? And so, it could be a part of your lifestyle, but it's something that fitness to me is not something temporary. It's something you need to like keep doing forever.
So I used to be an electrical apprentice for 3 years, and it kind of felt like I was getting paid to just work out. Probably not good for my back, but I think going from that and doing physical labor, I was washing dishes and like cleaning car washes. I had like a 4-year period after high school of just like busting ass. And then going to like sitting at a desk all day and being on a computer, and it's like a completely different ballgame. And I think more of it is mental. How do you maintain physical discipline and like consistently work out and stay healthy after that shift? Like what's the best way to do that, if that makes sense?
Like to me, if you have a physically challenging job and you're burning calories, you should track calories. Get an iWatch, like get some kind of watch. Like track your calories, your steps. It's important to know that because you understand your calorie intake. If you're already burning a lot of calories and you're kind of at your limits, that's fine. Like you're getting your exercise. Like to me, being jacked and ripped and lifting all these heavy weights, that's a different variation of fitness. But to me, being fit is just being healthy, right? And the only way that you can really maintain that is just eat healthy. If you can choose not to eat the triple cheeseburger and the shakes, because I get it. When I worked those labor jobs, I was always hungry and I was ready to eat an entire large pizza myself. But that's when discipline starts to come in. You go, hey man, I get this. I can work really hard and I'm burning a lot of calories and I'm already physically exerted. But if I can just eat healthy, which you and I understand is 80% of the diet, right? 80% of your physical fitness is what you eat. It's not how much you work out, because there are people that don't exercise a whole lot, but they eat healthy and they look healthy. They're not overweight. They're not struggling with a bunch of disorders and stuff. And so if anything, the bare minimum is just eat healthy. Choose to eat healthy. Do meal prep. If you're going to go to fast food, figure out how to order things off their menu to create a healthier idea, because you can. Like if you avoid, like if I want to go to McDonald's, it's like my first job, right? I can order a couple of the like 99-cent cheeseburgers, but I can just leave the bun off, because the bun is the worst part. It's like fake bread anyways. Like if I can leave the cheese, and because again, those are like highly processed foods. It's not like pure cheese. It's not like the healthiest version. So if I can just eat the meat and the lettuce and like a little salad on the side, like that's a pretty healthy meal. I'm going to get my protein count and it's not going to bloat me up with inflammation. And so I just really try to focus on low carbs and low sugars. And if you can have that discipline, you'll actually keep your weight down.
Perfect. Going into 2025, what do you think is going to change for the trades? Because I feel like everyone thought AI and robots were going to replace like the low intelligence or whatever they want to call it, labor jobs, and it's the complete opposite. It's replacing brains, not the whole brain, because I think humans are very unique and are always going to be able to differentiate themselves. But how do you think the trades is going to look with the introduction of AI? What do you think businesses should be preparing for? How should they be positioning themselves going into 2025?
To me, AI is an amazing tool. I play with it basically every day, and it's not that challenging. I think people hear AI, and if they've never played with it, it sounds intimidating. Oh man, artificial intelligence, that sounds like really like, dude, it's super easy. It's like talking to a person. You're just typing it. You can ask it questions. You can ask it to do things for you just by typing it in, and it'll give you the answer. Like one of the easiest hacks, this will be a good one for this episode. If you heard me talk about processes and systems, and if you're a small business owner and you're like, oh crap, I don't even know what that means. Like that sounds fancy pants. That sounds like corporate, and it is. But you're wondering why you can't scale and have repeatable outcomes or get the right people and train them repeatably. It's because you don't have the processes and systems. Well, guess what? You can go get Chat GPT and it's $20 a month, like really cheap. And you can ask ChatGPT, hey, ChatGPT, I own a plumbing company and I would like you to create my processes and systems for me. Could you create a list of those? And it will create the index of all the ones that are relevant to that industry. And then when you have the list of the processes, you can go, can you write that specific procedure for that number one? And then it'll spit out in a full, and it'll be relevant to plumbing, you know? And so you can have your entire processes and systems created in about an hour instead of paying a consultant, $20,000 is what that would normally cost to build that for you. You can have that for $20. You can create a membership for 1 month, have all your processes and systems created, and then all you got to do is edit them. It'll probably 90% accurate. You can edit them a little bit, save those as Word docs, and now you got your processes and systems all lined out. And you can give those to the employees, and you can teach from them and instruct from those, and use those as customer checklists on the things that you have to do. And so don't fear AI, just use it. Just treat it like a very smart human that can produce a lot of output instantaneously. And once you start to understand the benefits of using it, it'll be part of your business life. So I think embrace the technology. It's easy. It's very easy to use. The other thing is that we all understand that there's a shortage of tradespeople. And that's largely for my Gen X generation. Our baby boomer parents kind of shamed us into going to college because they didn't think the trades were going to result in six-figure earnings. That was true in the 1980s and the 1990s. And so we had an abundance of tradespeople in the boomer generation, and they weren't making a lot of money because there was too many of them. They didn't have a lot of education jobs. And so now things have changed because information is readily available, and more people are going to college to get degrees that don't pay them very well. People have kind of shunned getting into trades. They're not wanting to be the welders or the insulators or the painters and all these different trades. And so there's a severe shortage of qualified workers. Like I mentioned, that'll be the problem that you guys that own companies will be facing the rest of your careers. But the benefit is that when there's a shortage of supply, the demand will increase. As our population increases, there'll be fewer plumbers to show up at your house. There'll be fewer electricians to wire up your house. And they'll be able to charge more because supply versus demand. And so I predict in the next 5 to 10 years, you'll see the highest earners will be the people that are really good at their trades. You can't just get in the trades and be average and suck at it. Like, you have to be good at it. Build a company that's really good at what they do. And these are always going to be the multimillionaires in the next 10 to 15 years. Like when they're starting to sell these companies and there's a shortage of these people doing these things, I think that you're going to start to see that certain trades will earn more per hour than attorneys, which is ridiculous to think about because attorneys average between, on a low end, $100 an hour, on a high end, thousands of dollars per hour. And some of the best tradespeople that are in high demand that build maybe their personal brand and people only want to work with them specifically, they'll be earning those thousands of dollars per hour to go work on some really cool projects.
You mentioned using ChatGPT to create systems and processes. How do you make sure that those systems and processes get implemented?
I think that if you are going to bring your expertise into any business, that you should have the knowledge to look at the processes and systems that it creates for you and be able to judge based on your own skill set. This is pretty accurate, and you'll be surprised. Like, it's very accurate. You can even ask it to write a procedure on how to change the faucet on a sink. Like, it gets really technical, and it'll step by step. Because really, here's how ChatGPT and any AI works. Anything that's published on the internet, it knows. It can find it. If it can find it and read it and understand it and learn it, it can write instructions on how to do it. Because let's be real, like, there's probably a zillion how-tos, especially on YouTube, or like manufactured documents on how to install this faucet. And so AI can go scout all those things out, figure out if there's something common, and create a generic procedure on how to install a faucet and write it out step by step. And so that all happens in seconds.
And so the way that gets implemented, would that be like an employee handbook or the initial onboarding training? How does it look when you actually put it into action?
Yeah, you would create your accessible drive that has all of your processes, your procedures. And anytime somebody's out on a job, it's your job as a manager, as an owner, to make sure that they're adhering to the process. So whatever the procedure is, it's like a checklist, right? Okay, did you follow the procedure? Because we're trying to minimize risk. And risk for a service company is like doing something incorrectly and having to go back and fix things for free. So now you're really costing the company double because they charged for the initial install and you did it wrong, and now you got to go fix it and you're spending double. It's costing you money, right? And that's why a lot of owners get pissed off on the rework. And so if you have a procedure and a checklist that you're following, you can say, hey, like I did everything in a procedure, then you're not going to get, there's no harm, no foul for an employee perspective if you followed the procedure. And sometimes things just happen, right? But if they find that you didn't follow procedure, then it's your ass. It's like, hey, you did not, like, this is your third time to not follow procedure. Like, you're costing us money, you're fired, right? And so you have to use those procedures and everything. And I came from oil and gas, dude. We had to use procedures for everything. I mean, it's highly regulated, safety measures, financial risks, like all these things are procedures within procedures and a lot of sign-offs and signatures. I'm very, adept on understanding, like, you got to follow the process because there's also legal implications at those high levels of the high dollar contracts. If you don't follow the process, like, you could be sued for millions of dollars. And so, it's up to the manager to make sure they enforce those things. And they see that people are not following you. Those are the wrong people.
What are the most common mistakes you see new entrepreneurs making?
Most common mistakes for new entrepreneurs. I think that they do not understand how to manage their cash flow. They make a few things a profit and they go spend too much money, and then they wonder why they can't stay afloat, and they're having to worry about, like, oh man, like, we're not making any money this month, I got to go out of business. And so delayed gratification is a big part of that. I think that don't go spend a bunch of money just because you made money, because having cash reserves is going to help you grow the company. I'm a car guy, and I remember some of the content I would post out maybe years ago. It would piss off my car friends because I'd say, hey, these guys, I got car friends, like, they're going to go buy like $100,000 plus sports cars, right? And I know what their career is, and they're not making a lot of money. They don't have a lot of money saved away. And I remember I made this post maybe 10 years ago. It's like, guys, I didn't buy my first $100,000 sports car until I had $1 million in the bank. And they were kind of irritated by that because they're like, well, who do you think you are? Like, I'm never going to be a millionaire. I'm never going to make $1 million. Like, why shouldn't I buy a sports car? Like you hear all the excuses, right? And I said, man, before I had money, I was buying $25,000, $30,000 cars. And in perspective, this is 20 years ago. That was a lot of money, right? So, like, I was happy driving my Camaros and my Trans Ams and my pickup trucks and stuff while I was building my companies. Like, I didn't go buy a Dodge Vipers and stuff like that like I do now later. I didn't do that. And that's legitimately not, I didn't do it until I had, until I had 7 figures in the bank, I didn't go spend 6 figures on a car. Like, it's a toy, right? And so many people get that wrong, and they wonder why they can't get ahead because they got this giant payment on something that's just holding their potential back, like their opportunity. So in terms of just managing your cash flow, dude, stay lean and small as long as you can. Focus on not just chasing revenue, but profit. Profit is what matters. Like, what do I need to do to increase profit? And so quit buying stupid stuff that is like nice to have equipment, but not need to have. I think a lot of times people in manufacturing stuff, they go spend a lot of money on things that are nice to have. Like, oh, it'd be nice to buy that piece of equipment or that tool or that machinery. It'd be nice to have that. But if it doesn't immediately create some profit for you, then it's not a need to have. It's a nice to have. And when you start looking at things through a lens of like, do I need to have that right now? Would that make my process more efficient? Could I charge more if I had that? Would I generate more business or leads because I had that piece of equipment or that extra truck? Like, start spending money on things that you need to have to improve your business. And if you can always keep that mindset, no matter how big you are, then you'll do a lot better than people that are just buying fancy offices with fancy furniture and just spending way too much on a website that doesn't generate leads. Like, they're spending on shit that looks cool, looks nice. They like to have it, but it's not creating any value for their company.
Sales. What are the biggest mistakes people are making when it comes to trying to sell things?
They're really spending too much time on features and things like that about the product, but they're not really focused on the problem that the customer's facing. So it's kind of a psychology exercise where, if someone, I think one of the examples that we hear about, like selling a hammer, or it's like, are they really buying the hammer? Are they really buying the nail? Like, yeah, they physically are buying a hammer and a nail, but what do they want? They want the hole in the wall. That's what they want, or the drill, like the drill bit one, right? What's the real outcome? They want a hole drilled. So they have to buy the drill bit and the drill to achieve that, but ultimately the goal was that I just need a hole drilled. And so if you speak on the challenges or the problems that people have and offer the solutions, which may be the drill and the drill bit, use that as an analogy however you wish, then people are more receptive to that message. So you're like, hey man, you're really struggling when you need that hole drilled, and like I got a solution for that. So people want to focus on the drill. I got this drill and it's 3 speeds and you can do this and it's a hand chuck, and like that's not the problem they're trying to solve. Like no one wants to buy a drill. They have to buy a drill because they had to solve something with it, right? So start speaking to the end problem that they want to solve. Well, it can be an emotional decision for people too when you're buying, like kitchen remodels, right? I think a lot of times people waste time talking to the man of the house when we all know it's usually the woman of the house that wants the nice kitchen, and it's an emotional thing, right? And so you may come in and like try to speak to the dude and you're like, well, these kind of cabinets are better and this is why. And like you're getting all technical about the stuff, but the woman's kind of feeling left out of the conversation, and she just wants something that looks nice, that makes her feel happy when she walks in the kitchen, and makes all her relatives go, oh, this is an amazing remodel. Like the emotional thing is what you're trying to sell. So sell that emotional reaction, like, hey, if you remodel it this way, like you're going to have some amazing Thanksgiving dinners, and when your family come over, your friends come over, they're going to be envious of your kitchen. Like you're selling them on the emotional thing that they really want, and it just happens to be the kitchen.
What's the right way to set goals? I feel like this is a hard thing for many people, myself included.
Setting goals, I think you need to set goals, I'd say 3 to 5 years out, because most people will overestimate what they can achieve in a year and underestimate what the potential is. And so I always think about 3 to 5 years out, and I think about who do I need to become or who do I want to become in 3 years. And so I visualize myself physically, how I communicate, how I carry myself, how I walk, how I speak, like all these things. Like who do I need to become to have the ideal life and the opportunities that are going to come with that? And level of fitness, how much money do I want in the bank, right? Those are the kind of things you need to think about. And once you have a very vivid, idea of who that is, you start to realize like, okay, in order for me to become that person in the future, I need to start making decisions on actions today that lead that way. Because anytime we make any kind of decision, even the small ones, like the meal that you're picking on your menu today, the food on the end of your fork, which decision is leading me to that future version of myself, which is going the opposite direction. We know that pretty quick. And so if you can start to hack and start to think and try to operate the best of your ability of what that future version of you looks like today, it's inevitable that you will become that person. You will grow to become that person because you start to operate and make decisions like that person long before you become one. Like money mindset and stuff like that, when people are talking about millionaire mindset, dude, you do not have to be a millionaire to have a millionaire mindset. In fact, you will have the mindset long before you become the millionaire. Like you don't just all of a sudden make money and go, hey, I'm a millionaire, and get installed with millionaire mindset. It's like, that's silly to think about, but people do think that way. You have to build that mindset and those habits and the discipline and decision making, and then it leads to become that outcome. And so setting goals and things like that, I think you have to think further out and then just break it down. Okay, if in 3 years I want to do this, what does it in 2 years look like? What do I need to be? Like you just kind of connect the dots and then work backwards, and you'll eventually get into your 1 year goals and your monthly goals and your weekly goals and your sometimes daily. It depends on the goals. Like you don't have to go granular every day sometimes, but without that plan, it's just a bunch of dreaming and daydreaming that's never going to get you the result.
So the way that you're talking about setting goals is that you set the outcome first, and then the inputs kind of crystallize themselves and kind of form, and then you do those inputs to get the outcome. How do you, when you're setting goals that way, how do you get the figure in your mind, like the dollar amount or the item or material thing? How do you know what to put down there? Because I feel like me personally, I just like write a random number, and like I never know what it's coming from, and I'm kind of jealous of people that can do that. How do you
Yeah.
find that number?
I think everybody has their own different number. I think that it should make you a little bit uncomfortable. If it's a safe number, you probably would have hit that no matter what. Like even if you weren't trying. Like, you're 24, if you're thinking out at 30, right? If you're thinking like, oh man, at 30 I would like to make 150 grand a year. And like if that's your number, like that's kind of lame because that's kind of average for people who are like semi performers at something. And then you factor in inflation and all kinds of stuff like 150, in 6 years, maybe 150 grand is only like 75 grand. Like, you never know, right? And so kind of look at people that are that 30-year-old age range, like let's say 30 to 35. And you can go on any job posting board and look at kind of people with similar skill sets and see what the offer salaries are and go, oh, it looks like most of the people in their 30s are making 80 to 100 grand. Like maybe, the good ones are making 150, maybe management and some bigger companies, right? So why can't I do that? Why couldn't I do that, right? So if I'm driven and I actually starting a company, like why don't I shoot for 200 grand? Like why not, right? It's just these are all just numbers that we throw out there. And then when you have the goals, you go, okay, to make 200 grand, I probably had to be selling, let's say on average, because I know it's generalizing. I need to have a company that's selling at least 2 million in revenue to realistically net 200,000 because it's about 10% for most companies. So if I sell 1 million, I make 100,000 a year. If I sell 2 million, I make 200, and it kind of stacks like blocks, right? And so how do I build a company that makes 2 million in revenue? And you kind of work backwards from that, right? So you kind of just keep on working backwards until you realize like, oh, I need to sell expensive things instead of worrying about cheap things. Like if I'm selling t-shirts, I got to sell a whole lot of t-shirts to make 2 million. If I'm selling roofs, like that's not too many sales. I'm selling swimming pools, that's not too many sales. I'm selling houses, that's definitely not too many sales, right? So I like to look at things like what are the units that I'm selling, and I like to sell very expensive things if I can. It's like the same amount of effort, like more margin, more commission per sale, and it's less stressful to have those big ticket items that you can sell.
How long should business owners hold their breath if they're looking to scale when it comes to paying themselves?
Yeah, scaling is a very popular word, and most people don't understand what it means. Actually, a couple episodes, I actually made an episode to just cover what scaling is. The scaling is not about hiring people and getting a bigger location and adding a couple more trucks to your fleet. That's what most people think, but they go about it wrong. And so scaling should be a reaction to what the market is telling you that they need more from you. So scaling should be caused by you not being able to keep up with demand. And so maybe you've created some kind of a lead generation system that's delivering to you a lot of leads, and you're getting a lot of calls on your phone, you're getting a lot of email inquiries, and people are like, oh man, I want to work with you. I want to work with you. I want you to build this thing or whatever, right? But you don't physically have enough people to do that. And you're like, oh man, we're so far behind. Like I would love to work with you, but it's going to be 3 months before I can get to you. And then they go do something else. Like they go hire somebody else, right? And so scale should be a reaction to supply versus demand. Like, man, I got high demand and I don't have enough supply. Let me go add another technician. Maybe I need to hire, this person to do these kind of things to scale. And so that's kind of the right way to scale because you're scaling, you're profitable, and you're doing things to kind of support the output of your company. Where people get it wrong is they go, hey man, I'm just going to go hire a bunch of people and add up some more trucks and get a bigger location and put some fancier furniture in it, and then their phone's not ringing, their email's not coming in, they're not getting any leads, and they're like, oh man, I scaled my company, but I'm not busy enough. I got to lay people off now. So because they did it backwards, right? I'd rather be really busy and turn people away. That's a good problem to have because you can solve that problem when you got cash flow coming in. Than the other way. I'd hate to be the big company that can't keep busy and you got to lay people off.
What is your ultimate goal for 365 Driven? Sorry for asking you while you were taking a drink.
365 Driven is an entrepreneurship community. I'm in that legacy phase of my life. I made a lot of money. And I was helping a lot of people that were in my inner circle and people that were working with me and stuff like that, and help them build really successful companies. And so they were always saying, man, you should be teaching this full time. Like, you should be helping more people. And it was really my insecurities. I didn't want to be on camera. I didn't want to be on stage. I didn't think about podcasting. I always thought maybe I could write a book, so that's why I wrote my book. And I put it out there, and people wanted to interview me, and people wanted me to speak. And so I had to go invest in those skills to do that. I was not comfortable doing that. I had to learn how to be on camera. I had to learn how to be a public speaker. And I'm very grateful I learned those skills. It really helped me become more confident and put myself out there. I had to like things I was hiding from. And so I think for me, 365 driven, I just really I really hate seeing the stats of like 50% of businesses go out of business by year 2. I hate that stat. And I wonder why. It's like, why are these companies, half of all businesses that are starting to go out of business by year 2? That sucks. Now, here I am building companies 20 years now. And so what is it that they're missing? What is it that they're not prepared for? And why are they giving up so soon? What mistakes are they making? And so 365 driven is to help people getting past that. I want to make sure that 50% failure rate improves at some point. And I want to help millions of business owners or people that aspire to become business owners build successful companies and understand time freedom and location freedom and being able to build something valuable and exit and make their millions of dollars if that's their goal. Like, I want to help with that. I enjoy doing that.
Perfect. Tony, thank you so much for coming on. I seriously appreciate it. I apologize for the beginning of this podcast where things were lots of noises, but where can people find more about you, serve you? Where can they learn more about you and kind of help you with your business goals?
All right. Well, thank you for the opportunity. And, the easiest way to find me is on 365driven.com. And you can find me on Instagram and Facebook. So, Tony Whatley. I'm all over the internet.
Perfect. Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.